Right, so we're diving into some pretty strong opinions about this whole Hunter Biden pardon thing.
Hmm.
We've got a commentator here. They're reacting to President Biden's decision, and there's a lot to unpack. Seems like they're not really focused on the pardon itself, though.
Yeah, they kind of brush over the pardon. What they really latch onto is, I guess you could say, the hypocrisy of it all.
The hypocrisy.
Yeah, like, the Democratic Party likes to project this image, right, of moral superiority. And this commentator saying this pardon, it just blows that whole image out of the water.
So it's not just about Hunter Biden, it's about the whole party.
Exactly. They're saying, look, you can't go around claiming to be the good guys while doing the exact things you criticize others for.
And this commentator brings up Biden's past statements about this too, right? Like when he said flat out, I will not pardon him.
Oh, yeah, they bring that up. And the fact that Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, she also said the same thing.
Right, right. So it's like it's a broken promise, right, from the highest office.
Yeah, and I think, that's where this idea of betrayal comes in. This commentator, they break down the public reaction to this whole thing into these, like, waves.
Waves.
Yeah, they describe it as, like, first there's disbelief, right? Nobody thought Biden would actually go through with it. Then the outrage, right? People feel lied to, manipulated. And then it gets even deeper.
Deeper.
Yeah, like there's this confusion about the scope of the and apparently goes all the way back to 2014. Like what? And then finally it reaches this point where, well, the commentator says the Biden administration starts playing the victim Olympics.
Victim Olympics. What does that even mean?
Well, it's like instead of just owning the decision, they're trying to deflect the criticism by painting themselves as the victims,
Ah, I see. So they're not taking responsibility for their actions. They're trying to flip the script.
Right. And the commentator argues that this just further erodes public trust, especially among those who are already, disillusioned with the whole political system.
Yeah, I can see that. If you already feel like politicians aren't trustworthy, some like this, it just confirms those suspicions.
Exactly. And this commentator, they actually bring up another commentator, Charlemagne the Hat God. He's been pretty critical of Biden all along.
Darn me, thick head.
Yeah, apparently he only voted for Biden because of Kamala Harris.
So what's the connection there?
Well, the commentator's using this to critique what they call identity politics, like blindly supporting someone just because they share your identity. They're saying it can lead to compromising your values.
Interesting. So stay true to yourself, even if it means going against the grain.
Right. Stick to your principles no matter what. That's what this commentator's advocating for.
Okay, so how does all of this tie back to Hunter Biden, though? I mean, how does Charlemagne fit in?
Well, they go on to compare Biden's actions to Trump's, right? Trump pardoned his associates, even gave him jobs.
Right, but everyone knew Trump was going to do that kind of stuff. He's not exactly subtle.
Exactly, and that's what this commentator is getting at. They say Trump was unapologetic about it, didn't try to appear morally superior.
So they're saying Trump was at least honest about it. Even if you didn't like what he was doing, he wasn't hiding it.
Yeah, transparency over everything. And to illustrate this point, they bring in a CNN article.
A CNN article, what's that about?
Well, according to this article, it seems Biden aides never really believed a pardon was off the table.
Really? So even behind closed doors, they knew this was going to happen.
Seems that way. There's even a quote from some former West Wing aides saying, anyone who was even close to the top knew that he was probably going to do this.
Wow. So if that's true, then it makes you question the Biden administration's motives, right? Like, why all the denials? What were they trying to hide?
Exactly. And the commentator goes on to say, and this is according to the CNN article, that Hunter Biden wouldn't have even pled guilty without the expectation of a pardon.
So it's like the whole thing was a setup from the beginning.
That's what this commentator seems to be implying. And I think this goes even deeper than just the pardon itself.
Deeper. How so?
They're connecting this event to a larger pattern they see within the Democratic Party. It's like they're saying, look, you talk a big game about transparency and accountability, but behind closed doors, it's a whole different story.
Interesting. So it's like a symptom of a bigger problem.
That's exactly what this commentator is arguing. They're pointing to what they see as a disconnect between the image the Democratic Party projects and the reality of their actions.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, right? About how much of what we see in politics is just, smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. So much for transparency.
Right. And this commentator, they're not just criticizing, they're offering an alternative. They're saying we need leaders who are honest, transparent, even when it's uncomfortable.
Leaders who walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Exactly. Leaders who prioritize doing the right thing over protecting their image or clinging to power. And, I think a lot of people are hungry for that kind of authenticity.
Yeah, someone who says what they mean and does what they say. It's a high bar, but maybe that's what we should be expecting from our leaders.
And speaking of transparency, the commentator also brings up the media's role in all of this, how they've covered the reactions. They specifically mention that CNN article again.
Are they saying there's some kind of bias going on?
They don't say it outright, but it's definitely implied. Like, are certain outlets downplaying the situation, framing it in a way that's favorable to Biden? It raises some questions about how media coverage shapes public perception.
It's true. It's hard to know what to believe these days, especially with social media and the 24-hour news cycle. Everyone seems to have an agenda.
Right. And this commentator is challenging us to be more critical consumers of information, to question the narratives we're presented with, to look beyond the headlines and dig deeper.
And that's what we're trying to do here today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't about left versus right. It's about holding all leaders to a higher standard, demanding honesty, integrity, and accountability.
Well said. That's a powerful message.
Yeah.
And it definitely makes you think about how this whole Hunter Biden thing, it's not just some isolated incident. It reflects something bigger, something about the state of our politics today.
Right. And the commentator goes on to talk about this idea of victim Olympics,
Right.
how it plays into this whole situation, how it reflects a larger societal trend. But, we can dive deeper into that in our next segment.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to hear more about that and about the media's role in all of this.
Yeah.
I have to unpack all of that next time.
So, yeah, this whole victim Olympics thing, it's like, instead of just owning the decision, the Biden administration is trying to paint themselves as the victims in all this.
Right. Like, it's everyone else's fault but theirs.
Yeah, exactly. And the commentator's arguing that, actions have consequences. You got to be accountable, especially when you're in a position of power.
And they're saying this whole victimhood thing, it just further erodes public trust, right?
Absolutely, especially for folks who are already skeptical of the system. It just adds fuel to the fire.
Makes you wonder how many people feel like politicians are more interested in saving their own skin than actually serving the people.
Right. But what's kind of cool about this commentator is that they're not just criticizing, they're offering a different way forward. Like, they're advocating for a kind of leadership that prioritizes honesty and transparency,
Even when it's tough?
especially when it's tough. And I think that's what's resonating with people. They want someone who's real, someone who says what they mean and means what they say.
I think a lot of folks are tired of the whole smoke and mirrors thing.
Totally. And speaking of transparency, the commentator also talks about the media's role in all this, how they've covered the pardon, the reactions. They even bring up that CNN article again.
Oh, yeah. The one that said Biden's aides always knew a pardon was coming.
Yeah, that one. It makes you wonder if there's some bias going on there, right?
Like, are they downplaying the situation, protecting Biden?
It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely raises questions about how the media shapes public perception,
It's tough these days with social media and everything. Information overload. Everyone's got an angle.
It's true. And this commentator is urging us to be more critical of what we read and hear, to question the narratives that are being pushed on us.
To think for ourselves.
Exactly. Don't just take things at face value. Dig deeper. Ask questions.
And that's what we're trying to do here, right? Have these tough conversations, explore different perspectives.
Absolutely. And it's not about picking sides. It's about holding everyone accountable, regardless of their political affiliation.
It's about integrity, right? Doing the right thing, even when nobody's looking.
Exactly. And I think this whole Hunter Biden situation, it's really brought those issues to the forefront. It's a wake-up call.
It definitely makes you think about what we should expect from our leaders and how we hold them accountable.
This commentator, they're really pushing us to examine those questions. And they're offering a different path forward, one that's based on honesty, transparency, and accountability.
It's a powerful message. And I think it's one that a lot of people are ready to hear.
I agree. So where do we go from here? Well, this victim Olympics thing, it's not just about Biden, right? It's a bigger societal issue. And that CNN article, it raises some serious questions about the media's role in all this. We're going to dive deeper into all of that in our next segment.
I'm ready when you are. Let's keep digging.
Mm.
This whole thing, it's wild, right? Like we're seeing behind the curtain a little bit.
It is, yeah. And what this commentator's saying is we need to stop buying into the facade, the whole carefully constructed political image.
Yeah, like Just be real. Be straight with people.
Exactly. Honesty, integrity, that's what matters.
It shouldn't matter if it hurts your image or makes things difficult.
Yeah, that's what this commentator's arguing, yeah.
Yeah.
Doing the right thing even when it's hard. That's real leadership.
It's a tough standard to hold people to, though.
It is. But, think about it this way. This whole Hunter Biden thing, it's not just about him, right? This commentator, they're using it as an example to talk about something bigger.
Bigger.
Yeah, about how we talk about politics, how much we trust our leaders, those big picture questions.
It's like this one event. It's a symptom of something deeper.
Exactly. And that's what makes this commentary so interesting. It's not just about pointing fingers. It's about trying to understand how we got here.
And maybe how we move forward.
Right. How we build a system, a political system where honesty and integrity actually matter.
So where do we go from here? What's the takeaway?
Well, I think this commentator's calling on all of us, right? To be more aware, more engaged, more critical.
Don't just accept what we're told. Dig a little deeper.
Right. Question the narratives, look for the motives, and ultimately, demand more from our leaders.
Higher standards.
Right, across the board. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, that's something to think about, right? As we continue to grapple with this whole situation and everything it represents.
Absolutely. This deep dive, it's given us a lot to unpack. And a lot to think about going forward.
It has. And we appreciate you joining us for the conversation.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.